Good day, and welcome to this lecture about pop and consume culture in modern art and the progressive response. My name is Kim Stier Andersen. We will start with two theories about the photo and its consequences, which is also important in the art, in the further art through history. There's a guy called Walter Benjamin who have written this essay, The Work of Art and the Age of Mechanical Reproduction, where he says that artwork is different from its mechanic copy. It's a loss of hour in the artwork. We'll talk about it a little later, but it will also be about that this thing that in old times you was about to create, for example, the paint for yourself before you could paint it. Nowadays you can just go into your paint program and the computer and make art and so on. So the way you make art is different from now, from later, longer ago. So that's what she talks about, and how we will look through that prism through the artworks in this lecture. And there is a girl called Annegret Jürgens-Kirchhoff who has written Technique and Tendencies in the 20th Century Art, where she says about the montage art is made not only because of the new possibilities in photo, but also try to catch the total feeling of a changed and chaotic environment. Through that we can see that we have the artwork which is changed through the technical means, but in the technical means is also changed the society around the artwork, so it plays up against each other, the artwork and the society around. And through that, photo montage breaks the rule of the form, and the photo art have no tradition, maybe realism, and institution didn't recognize it as art. These things is what we looked at when the photo art came. For example, today many will maybe say that these NFTs and other computer arts is not real art, but it's actually the same thing that we had in old times about the photo and the montage. People don't look at it as art; they look at it as more like a realist thing, where we can see through the 1870s the art begin to play more. But let's look at that later. But it could communicate the reality as it is, and it could be cut to create new images of reality. Exactly what we talked about longer ago, that art is art and photo it was not art, photo was photo. And then we have a guy called David E. Cooper who have made criteria in a book called A Companion to Aesthetics. And these 8 points, we can talk about that there's more layers in the art. There's more of these criteria is represented in art. Let's go through the 8 of them. Art represents reality. Art represents feelings. The form of art. Innovation in art. Art's references to tradition and genre. Institutional rules of which innovation traditions that should be highlighted or reduced, art as fantasy playing, and art as communication. And so off we start with the beginning, with Marcel Duchamp, Fountain from 1917. Here we have an artwork which is deleted its distance between the fine arts and the elements of everyday life, which taking a ready-made, and what a ready-made, a pissoir, and put it into the museum's view of what is art, and say this is an artwork because I have put a signature per. And this is the signature is the pseudonym Armut, which is a German word for poverty. So it's playing up as this fountain, which is a really the word fountain. Then I think about a big fine fountain with water and all this. And then here we have Armut, the poor version of the fountain, a pissoir. He deleted the demands of authorship and originality in arts. The artist don't need to make art, but he can point out what's artistic in the world. And he creates 3 strategies used by pop art, which is we will look at later. Appreciation of the ordinary, normal object can be art because of the label art and impersonal methods of production. Picasso, Braque, and Jean Gris began putting wallpapers and clothes in the works in 1912. They call it papier collé, and includes commercials and newspapers quotes. The perception of the city and the life in general was fragmented. The collage was perfect to make this fragmented chaos to an image. Werner Hoffmann terms collage optique. The elements have still meaning from where it is taken, plus the new meaning created in the cooperation with other elements. Michel Foucault photomontage is urban experiences compiled into an urban metaphor of chaos. Different angels give the idea of a moving eye in a body through the city. Wilhelm Lundström, which pictures we see below, from 1918 to 19, the box pictures where he invested the geometry and material of colored boxes and woods inspired by cubism, maybe suprematism. And here we look at a collage classic, Hannah Höchst's cut with the kitchen knife through the beer belly of a Weimar Republic from 1919. You can see a people mass in the left bottom corner, and Data artist and Lenin and Marx in the right bottom corner. Upper right corner, anti-Data, military and emperorine. And in the middle we see dancer Nitty Impikoven dance with expressionists Kette Kollwitz head. It has changed on time and room and is more follow patterns. You can see, as I talked about, that in the right corner, you can see like in the boxing fight, in the right corner we have this emperor regime and so on, and in the bottom we have the more socialistic Weimar Republic, Data, and these things. And these patterns, it's more like that they follow these patterns and they follow the other patterns, I don't know. The composition principle make the viewer create a systemic views in the patterns and the wheels of movement, industry, newspaper headline, papers use of photo and slogans in the streets. It's the patterns is make a chaos. It's make a chaos where we make you can see a futuristic, or not futuristic, but a future-looking chaos. What's going to happen? We are in a period. We have a time where things is unstable. What will bring us stability is the Data. And she also calls the picture a kitchen knife through the beer belly of the Weimar Republic. I see a chirurg cut down the belly of Weimar Republic, and then we see all what is in this Weimar Republic. We have the history, we have the wheels of the future, we have the newspapers, headlines, and all this kind of stuff. It's really chaos we see here. And in this collage we have Paul Citroën Metropolis from 1923. The streets and buildings in this collage is from Paris, New York, and Berlin as a metropole of the metropolis. The perspectives is disappear in the scale of the city maze, like we have heard in one of the first slices at this man going through the city, and we explore the city not as a person looking at a picture, but a person walking through the streets of the metropolis of the metropoles. The room is fragmented and put in a small image, 76 x 58 centimeters. No respect for the original scale of the buildings. And it is impossible to overview the city to acknowledgement that you have to see it as a system. The photo at the time seen very objective, as we also talked before, as an objective reality and artist's subjective views. No object in pic, but fragments would make a systemized object. The metropole is a giant real montage, which discontinuity only can be seen through the moving eye. And now we look at a picture, a painted picture by Robert Delaunay, his Eiffel Tower from 1911. The futuristic maxim that dynamic painting only can catch the city written is from Marinetti. Read the Futurist Manifesto by Marinetti. This with the cars and all this kind of how sculpture and art should express the future. It's a futuristic theme. And from 1910s to 20s, Delaunay made 30 paintings of the radio tower, symbol of stealth and modernity, the Eiffel Tower. The Eiffel Tower is a broken structure and an energy source expanding, building its world into the energy-nator, and a tribute to Paris as center of technological progress. And here we have another Robert Delaunay Eiffel Tower with trees from 1910. where we see an earthquake and stormy clouds around the Eiffel Tower and the weakness of modernity, like a Babel's Tower. And in 1912, it was still the tallest building outside US. And now we're going to back up on some of the pictures with some more theorist stuff. The phenomenological method. Fra Duchamp, The Literary City Between System and Sensory Perception. The article is about depiction of cities in novels in 1920 to 30, and it's about the reception of patterns in depiction of the city, as we have talked about before. He disproved that the modernist abstraction only was for the form experiment. As phenomenological object, the city is both fixed and variable. The traditional phenomenology sharply separates ways of being, becomes as a new kind of objectivity. The phenomenological reading means in Genève jargon that the artwork has a special style and expression as an creative transformation of the artist life world that reflects a certain way of experience and realize an outside world in aesthetic form that try to extract the patterns of conscience experience which is in the artwork. Edmund Husserl invented the method. It looks at how the objects appear, those called phenomenons. Intentionally, in the functional link, the mind always intentional is focusing on something. He says that you can't make logic made a priori. For example, you can't meet a schizophrenic who doesn't see the phenomena as it is. You can separate between an art's intention, the art's intentionality, and the intentionality of the artwork. The recognition is perceived as an expression, as an unfolding and clearing of rituals and structures. And in Roman Ingarden's The Literary Artwork from 1931, he represents three theories. The constitution theory. The artwork is built by mutual dependent layers. The reception theory. The viewer's reception of the artworks gives it a specific existence. The viewer fills empty spaces in the artwork. And aesthetic theory. The interaction between the layers in the artwork, aesthetic and mood-related qualities. Just like David E. Kuber's criteria earlier described. Four mutual dependent layers: sound layer, meaning layer, object layer, and aspect layer. The sound layer is the tone it's read in, how it looks for us, how the picture looks for us. The meaning layer is what the meaning is. The object layer is the viewer's experience, and the aspect layer is the perspective for the viewer, always different. Schematically, aspects create the reading while it happens. And the difference between the object layer and the aspect layer is that object layer is the objective view of the artwork, while the aspect layer is every time. If I look at a picture 3 times, it's different because my mood is different, or the lighting is different, or something like that, or I see something new in the picture. That is what the difference between the aspect and the object layer is. And so we're going to my book, Shit a Hole in the Artwork, Just a Drop on the Canvas. We have gone into the art theory century by me, Kim Andersen. And there are some sentences we also will look at later. We're saying it's even in abstract art is there references to underlying phenomena. Malevich wrote from Cubism to Suprematism and was inspired by Ukrainian folk art. Therefore, his art is not the 0 point, but an icon of revolution. He created a specific focus on the painted form and color, which you can see. Abstract art must be explained with the same methods as simplified allegories, exactly because both must be explained by the art itself or by an profession. And so we go to the steel and concrete art. Piedmontine neoplasticism in pictorial art 1917-18. This new plastic ideal will ignore the particulars of appearance, this is to say natural form and color. On the contrary, it should find its expression in the abstraction of form and color. That's to say, in the straight line and the clearly defined primary color. Theo van Doesburg, the steel, the term concrete art as he in 1930 founded the group Art Concret Manifesto. The basis of concrete art should be non-reference insofar as its components should not refer to or allude to the endless anomaly in the visible world. This is the distinction from abstraction generally. In a more general sense, abstract art could and often include the abstraction of form in a nature, but concrete art was intended to emanate directly from the mind. Theo van Doesburg suggests a link between works of art and ideals of peace and spirituality. As a designer and artist, Max Bill sought to create form which is visually represent the new physics of the early 20th century. And here we'll look at Theo van Doesburg's Rhythm of a Russian Dancer from 1918. Meditation on the Frontier, about he could hear the war from the neutral Netherlands. Purpose of art was to go to improve spirituality and peace. It produces a most spiritual impression, the impression of repose, the repose of the soul. Communication between people make the conscious of each other. First issue of the Steel, October 1917, around the Bolshevik Revolution, believed it would spread to Western Europe. Issue 9 had Malevich and Fontes in 1922, and he began to dislike Lenin. And now Piet Mondrian, which have two pictures here. Broadway Boogie Woogie up in the upper left corner from 1942-44, and Composition 2 in red, blue, and yellow from 1930 in the lowest corner. He moved to America and took his color line with him. Before, he only colored squares and black lines like you see in the lower picture. He used the same colors, but the black line has disappeared in Broadway Boogie Woogie. And Broadway Boogie Woogie is a total sum of city, both the street system with skyscrapers and the buildings itself with window glitter. The colors of the street plinks are as colors on the pictured streets. An abstract art moved from focus from meaning layer and object layer to sound layer and aspect layer. Not only motive, but the urban structure is in the mind is structure. It exhibits the phenomenology of the city and refuses to show it as one object. And here we have Elisetsky's Brown Room from 1923, an innovator to installations art and so on, and environments. An environment is based on schemes showed directly in the artwork. Umberto Boccioni, Manifesto of the Futurist Sculpture from 1912, put the surrounded into the world and abolished limiting lies of the sculpture. Brown is Russian for projects to confirmation of the new, and the work didn't limit itself by edgy walls. It just continued around and said it was a part of reality, not a canvas. You can move around and change perspective in the artwork. And here we have Alexander Calder. He invented the wire sculpture or drawing in space in 1929. He had his first solo show of these sculptures in Paris. He invented the mobile. 1932, a type of moving sculpture made with balances, suspended shapes that move in response to touch or air currents. Wire sculpture needed to be seen from one view, otherwise it's nonsense. And the perspective changes even if viewer is in the same position in the mobiles. Both fixed and variable, all in Garden's 4 layer can be changed. And here we're going to some Danish artists. Richard Winter made a composition, Nita Malevich, Norwinter from 1948. The association Linien 123 wanted to connect revolutionary and innovative art. Linien 1, 1934, was surreal and abstract artists. The association Linien 2, 1947, focused on object general quality instead of the expressive, and the natural consequences of the arts becoming general was to remove the auteur. Therefore, is this piece neither a Malevich nor a Winter. The article Synthetic Art from 1948, art has no feelings The feelings are in the viewer, therefore art must be created as technical mechanic as possible. The abstraction must both illusionous and referring to metaphysics of all forms and colors, but it is all in the viewer. And Richard Mortensen, who read Vasily Kandinsky's Point and Line to Plane 1926, and the line as the spirit of the artwork and color as the body. The line was both invisible and extremely important, and an artist should experiment with repetition, ordering, and scale, not just with colors, but also with points and lines, as we see in the picture at the right side, and planes. These, he is believed, were the building blocks of the composition. One want to put the line-based geometry in motion. The line should be more independent, and more function should just the metaphysical should have substance as the color planes. Color, form, and line doesn't go together. The line is not just contour. The line is a figure itself. Paul L. Andersen tried to restart the Line 3 in 1956, manifesto to catalog. The Line 3, the goal is to make art as specific symbols of emotional phenomena in the consciousness. Uwe Schwalbe, member of Line 2 and 3, to invent a limited code language with few colors and forms, as we see at Mondrian, for example, also, and to create an uneventful meditation in empty forms. Dismiss both the painter's subject and the viewer, which means liberating the viewer from its embodiment and the attention-craving noise around. The emotional phenomena is like a meeting with a god. And so we're back at international art with Mark Rothko. He started as a surrealist, later abstract expressionism. He started in 1936 as an unfinished book. Child art transformed itself into primitivism, which is only the child producing a mimicry of himself. Interested in psychoanalytical theories concerning archetypes of a collective unconscious, they understood mythology symbols as images operating in a space of human consciousness which transcends specific history and culture. Belief in art could free unconscious entities, and then he broke with surrealism. And so to the abstract expressionist pictures which Mark Rothko is famous for. For him, these blocks of various colors he was painting devoid of landscapes or the human figure, let alone myth and symbol, possessed their own life force. Many of the abstract expressionists discuss the art as aiming toward a spiritual experience, or at least an experience that surpassed the boundaries of the purely aesthetic. And Makrotka said, the people who weep before my pictures are having the same religious experience I had when I painted them. And if you are moved only by the color relationship, then you miss the point. And then back to me, Kim Andersen, who had written in New Traditionalism, Renaissance Manifesto. Malevich called his pictures icons because they refer to simplicity and the superior Lord. Like in the Bible, Johannes the first one. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And the Word have in gardens 4 layers, therefore art and religion is mysterious. And so we move up to the 60s, where new crossovers between genres and art forms. They want to make art public, and there were new terms: environment, happening, and minimalism. Minimalism is removing the inner composition and make the artwork to an ordinary thing. But Danish was more inspired by Russian suprematism than the American minimalism, aesthetic experiments and the building of a new society. And the Danish X-Skolen did all the experiments, from fluxus to minimalism. And another idea from the 60s is the conceptual art. Idea is more important than traditional aesthetics, technical and material concerns. Joseph Cossette, from 1969, essay, Art and Philosophy. All art after Duchamp is conceptual. In nature, because art only exists conceptually. Due to David E. Kuber's criteria of museums professionals' recognition as it is as art. Robert Rauschenberg erased a Wilhelm Koenig drawing 1953, and Clement Greenberg Modern art followed a process of progressive reduction and refinement towards the goal of defining the essential formal nature of each medium. Clement Greenberg's essay Avant-Garde and Kitsch from 1959. Kitsch is a filler made for the consumption of the working class. Avant-garde is enlightened and revolutionary critical thinking. Pop art did not really change taste on more than a superficial level. And Hermann Brock, Kitsch aims to copy the beautiful, not the good. And here we have another classic, a very famous work by Piero Manzoni, Art is Shit from 1961, where he made 90 small cans sealed with the text Art is Shit, priced by the weight based on the Cuban value of gold, and it was a critic of art market and consumerism in general. And then we'll look at a guy called Uwe Beuys and the lines to the contemporary Philip Bruck, which we'll look at later. In 1961, Beuys was appointed professor of monumental sculpture at the Art Academy, Düsseldorf. He sublimated organic materials and believed that humanity, which had turned on rationality, was trying to eliminate emotions and thus eliminate a major source of energy and creative. Was motivated by the belief in the power of universal human creativity and was confident in the potential of art to bring about revolutionary change. His formulation of the concept of social structure in which sociality as a whole was to be regarded as one great work of art started two parties, German Student Party in 1967 and Direct Democracy in 1970, was inspired by Rudolf Steiner, might have inspired Philip Bruck, mentioned later, 2015 book If Not Us, Who's Then, and creator of the group Center for Political Beauty. Bruck makes political happening deeds like crowdfunding a plane full of immigrants to Germany. And so we look back in the 60s with the International Citizenship Courageous, which was started in 1957. In 1962, a fence at Møntergade is painted in many colors by E.G. Jens Jørgen Thorsen. There were some guys called Cæsar, Thorsen, and Jørgen Næss made a manifesto inviting to make culture on the streets. 1964, Jørgen Næss cut the head of the Little Mermaid in Copenhagen. In Biennale in Venezia, 1968, Swedish exhibitionists occupied and become Pavilion of Rebellion with graffiti, anti-happening, in opposition to gallery fluxus. The viewer should be the actor in the citizenist art movement, and Alan Capro, citizenism, unprofessional actors without audience only one time and with no meaning. It should be as close as to not art as possible. And so to the opposite, or what you call fluxus, which have the same purpose, an art everybody could understand, and started in George McKeown's gallery in New York in start 60s. Dick Higgins College to combine to environment to happening. This art history which is moving on. 1962, Eddie Kupkes invited Fluxus to perform at Nikolaj's Church Art Hall in Copenhagen. Also filmed by the Danish radio's broadcaster, but not shown on television because critics think it was too weak. Short, strange performance on a stage without audience participation and synthesis of many art forms. Fluxus became what it didn't want to be, museums art without audience interaction. And here we'll look at Peter Louis Jensen's and X-Skolen's work, Started Stripes Forever from 1965. He took a room and painted like the American flag, started the performance without cover photo, and cola was given to audience. Then the Jacqueline Kennedy figure brought in cover and paper and painted the flag upon. Then moved around so audience can touch, put upon the flag and silhouettes is throughout. The throughout template is given to audience, mixed between American pop vocabulary, cliches and fluxus, and minimalism in the flag. Troels Andersen teach in Russian avant-garde at X-Skolen. James Meyer's Minimalism 2000 is a book. USA didn't know much about the Russians. Danes had a lead in that way. The focus was in investigating material and the meaning behind. Hans-Jørgen Nielsen, What Happening Baby, in the first copy of Exclusive's magazine Picture Art 1966, later Architecture and Picture Art. A description, non-person, enormity, mechanic, material interrogation, form template, flatness, and monotone was one of the words he used for his art. All layers is off in minimalism. Now it's just a neutral thing. Gives an opportunity of communication between work and audience, because in the space between those which is important. In Engan's term, from sound level to the aspect level layer. And Peter Louis Jensen created minimalist sculptures for being put on streets. The environment is more important than the work. And here we look at Richard Hamilton's What is What that make our world so pleasing today, from 1956, I think. Where we see him and she as consumer goods, a cleaner commercial, a newspaper anonymous on the chair, TV woman phoning, free comics, young romance is excelled as art on the wall, and the window, outside the window, a cinema outside with poster for Al Johnson, the jazz singer, the first film with sound. This picture is really because it's show all those things that was appearing in the late 50s and in the 60s with pop and new technological possibilities with radios and TVs and so on, and depicted in a collage. And here we have the work Skyway from 1964 by Robert Rauschenberg. The four worlds is represented: the city, space travel, John F. Kennedy, and Rubens' figure of Venus. The viewer is in the bottom, looking at the artwork. Humans' ambition of the great leaders' ambition. Kennedy points a finger to say that this is the ambition. Space and cityscapes dominates, but Rubens' Venus, both the woman, the art, and the history of good old days. She looks in the mirror, retrospective and self-reflective. And then we have the Independent Group, which was a group meeting at the Institute of Contemporary Art in London, 1952 to 56. Subject was pop culture and the new relation between art and technology, non-hierarchically between fine and low art. Lawrence Alloway's article, The Arts and the Mass Media from 1958, mass culture and the form of folk culture distinguished in that mass culture was not produced by the public, but was made for the public by experts. Mass media gives lectures in assimilations and choices of rules. Pop culture is built on a scheme like e.g. the Hollywood model. Pop culture gives a language to understand always changing world. Audiences experiencing culture consuming, and therefore art is not for minority. Fine art has to coexist with mass culture on the same level. And so we're going to see some more concepts from the 60s. Pro, New Left, and Underground. In 1950, the working class subcultures became part of the mass media. Fra Duchamp sees that in Pro Manifesto 1965, first copy of Pro magazine. Pro is Dutch, number 12, has something against capitalism, communism, fascism, bureaucracy, militarism, professionalism, dogmatism, and authoritarism. A New Left, not focusing on worker-satisfied conviction, but issues such as civil rights, gay rights, abortion, gender roles, and drugs. Media and expanding consumer culture took faster and faster elements of worker subcultures. New market for subculture therefore focused on culture industrial mechanism. Rolf Kaiser's book Underground Pop, No Counterculture from 1969 is not a fashion, it's an alternative concept of society we're interested in. E.g. the gamblers who hang on street doing nothing, buying nothing. Kurt Narne Jürgensen, if you get a record deal, you're not underground, like the separation excuse between those who recognized by the art world and scholarships and state aid and so on, and those who didn't. And these concept clashes in a coalition called Kommune 1, Kommune 1. Rudi Dutschke, West Berlin should be an example on basic democracy, showing a third way between socialism and capitalism. Kommune 1 was the first such collective in Berlin 1967-69, made also political actions. In 69, some rockers went there and destroyed the rooms and made the people flee. In 1969, no uniform subculture, but a lot of fraction like mods, hippies, tits, hipsters, gamblers, and more. There was big money in the provocation because of more viewers who were von Trotter. You tolerate and laugh and e.g. someone shits on the floor. We need to make new ways to shake up the audience. And here we look at Claes Oldenburg's Floorburger from 1962. He has a humorous approach to art. 1961, he made The Store, where he sold painted plaster sculptures of food and clothing, urban everyday things. I support an art of ice cream comes dropped on the concrete. His book, Store Days from 1961, not only psychological statement but many. The environment was the depiction of city life, psychological nature, its true nature. And here we have Andy Warhol's Campbell's soup cans, 1962, 32 different canvases with the 32 varieties of Campbell's soup existing at that time, like motif of Marilyn Monroe, where she portrays various colors with different colors. Catalog of an American subculture shows a small variation in the similar big picture. And then we move upon to the land art. Robert Smithson's Spiral Church from 1970, built in Great Salt Lake near Rochelle Point in Utah. 460 meter is the spiral jetty and 4.6 meters wide. The water level of the lake sometimes makes the jetty invisible. You have to explore through walking on it and change perspective through you walk on it, or look at this picture it's taken up from air to see it all. And so we go to Sven Dalsgaard, same places, 2 rods from 1978. He made art to acknowledge himself in various styles through his life, surreal, dada, and concrete sculptures. He called it psychophotographic. Reality is depicted absurdly like in dreams. The artistic process is accomplished of the place. To find the place is to acknowledge his own existence, like Rothko or Svalbard describing the spiritual experience in art. What we don't know is interesting. He's used Dannebro, the Danish flag, a lot as ready-made. Exhibited 31 different Dannebrogs in Paris in 1967. On mounts, the flag's national meaning, like in picture, it is like a sheet drying. Looks like a blowjob is hidden behind the flag, and woman and dog as some kind of animal instinct. And here we see the work, Truly I Say to You, One of You Will Betray Me from 1969, also from St. Dalsgaard. Opposites in his art is morality, immorality, human god, and use of twins. Uses different religious symbols from Herman Fredriksen, A Travel in the Place 2004. He was a close relation to God, but what is God? Both critic of public church, but also existential searching. Saw Giacometti in Paris and made sculptures and paintings with thin lines, e.g. at Randers' anniversary in 1952, the Randers Girl, which was vandalized many times by people who disliked it. And many did. Painted Christ from Randers 1-2 in 1954, The Suffering of Jesus and Sculpture of St. Sebastian 1955. Painted Jesus as the Randers Girl and Suffering of a non-understood artist. Truly he looks up at God as he has betrayed him, betrayed the nation and the authoritarian church. And so we move up to Martin Bigram from 1992, A Radical Myth. He used this hooded figure art in various artworks. And here the figure art, he stands in the spotlight while the sculptor is less lighted up. His skiffle has lost his plate and he looks at the Donald Judd sculpture Untiled from 1980. It's like the idea about 0 point, it wasn't possible to reduce art. The spotlight is on the ghost of art. And if you look at shadow, it seems to come from Judd. The artist's attention shines on the viewer, the art perception in general. And here we look at Andreas Gursky's Shenzhen and Hong Kong Stock Exchange from 1994. He is a photographer known for his pictures where the individuality gets lost in the repeat. Shenzhen horse riding station in Hong Kong, almost ornamental abstraction, only looked in detail you find real elements. The people is like small elements in a big machine. A photograph using avant-garde symmetry, Shenzhen reminds me of Rothko's color fields. And here we move to Austria with Monochrome, the excerpt from 1997, an international art technology philosophy group founded in 1993, mixture of proto-aesthetic French work, pop altitude, subcultural science, and political activism. Main office is located at Museumsquartier in Vienna. Focus on a critical and educational narrative. Johannes Grenzfurthner calls this looking for the best weapon of mass distribution of an idea. A tele-robot remotely controlled with a web interface chat form. The robot was supported and operated by a big community. The robot basic structure was built one of the remodeled Lego bricks and equipped with a fisheye lens camera. The project was the first tele-robot tele-community project of its kind. It was presented at an art festival and technology presentation. And here we see the artist Uwe Max Jensen made the work Hole in the Earth 2070. In 1996 he wrote some articles to Ekstrabladet and BT about different subjects, some in his own name, some used signatures of professors at the Art Academy. Some of his works are considered vandalism, like pissing in a Olafur Eliasson installation, or the comment to Katarina Gross's work in Aarhus, Hole in the Earth, where he poured painting in a hole in the earth. And that's what we see here. And here we also have a provocative work by Jes Brink and Henrik Plenge Jacobsen, Burn Out, a Burnt Kindergarten in 1994. It was a total environment with a burnt kindergarten. Comment on the debate in the 90s of how the welfare society should continue. Also a destruction of symbols that why it made it so much media attention. Neo-art from 1980s such as anti-capitalistic, social and or political critic, digital art, and ideas information as medium continue to be aspects of contemporary art. Moscow conceptualist, built on such art or Soviet pop art, which used the Soviet social realistic style in a new pop ironic way. And here we have a work of some of those Russians, Kumar and Melamed, here with the Yalta Conference from 1984. Vitaly Kumar and Alexander Melamed is what they're called, and they have made a picture of Stalin, Hitler, and an alien meet at the Yalta Conference, which was a conference at the end of the Second World War that separated Europe in sectors. Hitler invites to silence of the fascism and how it lived on in Europe, Russia afterwards. Sculpture in 1986, a bronze bust of Joseph Stalin in a phone box which was installed in the red light district of The Hague. Funny use of symbols in serious artworks. And continue with a Russian, with Pyotr Polensky with Fixation from 2013. He hammered a nail through his nuts to the pavement, and he made a work called Stitch, where he sued his mouth. About 2012, Kazan Cathedral, St. Petersburg, holding a banner that stands Action of Pussy Riot, was a replica of the famous Action of Jesus Christ, Matthew 21, 12-13, Jesus in the Temple. 21st February 2012, Punk Prayer, Mother of God, Drive Pudding Away. Like Pussy Riot, a feminine, clearly Zapatnik. And Pussy Riot sees video Make America Great Again, an occupation of the church. Then he moved to France. And here we go to Germany with Philipp Ruck, which we have mentioned before. He is the creator of the group Center for Political Beauty. And Philipp Ruck's book, If Not Us, Who Then, wants a collective mind of humanism. But the immigrant environmentalistic peace activist can't put down maxims of a commonwealth because he must understand people through their history and their reaction. Brugt makes political happening deeds like crowdfunding a plane full of immigrants to Germany. And now we are about to come to the conclusion what the avant-garde must do. We have David E. Kuber's criteria here in the left corner. We'll not talk about them, but we will have to see. What we have seen is that all elements will become of a subculture, with signal language creates an inner world of symbols. You have also an inner world, built of the definition of yourself, e.g. Danish art industries, slaver anarchists. These different cultures and symbol languages can be used in art production and perception. The phenomena can be read as symbols or will be invisible for the viewer. These symbols in our art, e.g. das Stil, use of one symbol geometry and signal colors, or religious allegories, use of Bible history. Now we all can make art, must the artist be aware of which inner worlds he represents, who are his viewers like David Kuber's criteria. And here we look at Gudrun Haslen, Gudrun's livs historie from 2004, Gudrun's life's history. If you want to succeed as an artist, you must be recognizable, which make you challenge yourself with use of e.g. the same colors or symbols in your art. Gudrun Haslen makes embroidery clothes with textures which reveals her writing reading disorder. As an artist, you get a signature which normally is one of few symbols. And this thing with signal language is also getting for art on a countryside, on a country scale. Whole cultures goes to signature level if they're not in our inner world. Like, what is Chinese art? Kung Fu, China food, and maybe Ai Weiwei. But his art represents that we see in our art world as a dictatorial China. Like Pussy Riot, Femin, and Piotr Palensky also approve our prejudice and what we want to see of Russian art. If we see real foreign art, it must represent some codes we don't understand, otherwise we will reject it. And so we go to the new traditionalism Renaissance's manifesto, which some of the points have been presented before, because it's me, Kim Stig Andersen, who has written these 10 points in my book. Skid hul i kunsten, lige klat på maleriet. Vi er gået ind i kunstteoriens historie. And the first maxim is, we must go back to an art people can understand. Even in abstract art is the existing phenomena behind. Malevich called his pictures icon because they refer to the simplicity and the superior lord. Malevich wrote from Cubism to Suprematism and was inspired by Ukrainian folk art, therefore refers his art not to a zero point, but both to tradition and folk culture. Abstract art must be viewed in the same way as heavy symbolic allegories, because both should be explained by the artist himself or in profession. Minimalism and suprematism differs from each other. The last exploded the geometry, while minimalism just minimalized it. Futurism, postmodernism, and high-tech is the baroque of the 20th century, and more exciting than pure brutalism. Adam Oehlenschläger, the poet of the Danish national anthem, won the University Silver Medal for an exercise about Nordic mythology in poetic arts in 1801. In opposition to the use of Greek and Roman symbology, the same must we do as they did for 100 years ago, when they discussed how the historicism in art should be. Art is communication. It must be the base for public conversation. Tradition are promoted and inhibited, so new creations and styles can come out of these, and the most important in the art is the public good. So we come to the last one, to this last slide, the conclusion. So what must the artist do? Be patriotic. You exhibit a cultural inner world in your art. The easiest is to represent the culture you were born in, also if your audience shares the same cultural background. Represent an Europe you want on our big base of art and history. Learn and use the symbols in your art, like you probably do if you paint a smile for happiness. Queer theater and many others were also built on schemes like Lawrence Alloway said about pop cultures to make catharsis. So be aware that if you don't care your art will be overridden by viewers that will always try to read some more than just an expression of doing in the artwork.